Today on the Matt Walsh Show, one of the top public schools in the country sold its blueprints and everything else to the communist Chinese government. This raises a couple of questions. First, how is that legal? Second, why did the school's whole program get shipped over except the DEI stuff? Also, the governor of Michigan appears in a bizarre TikTok video that appears to mock the Catholic faith. A new ad meant to persuade men to vote for Kamala is having very much the opposite effect. Elon Musk unveils the fleet of robots that will take over the world and enslave us all. And the new Joker movie may wind up being one of the worst flops in Hollywood history. What exactly went wrong and why? We'll talk about all that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show. Become a DailyWire Plus member today and get instant access to unparalleled election coverage from the most trusted voices in conservative media. And make sure to join us on election night for the best live coverage and insights as the polls close from the entire DW team. Don't miss a single moment of this historic race with DailyWire Plus as your election headquarters. Head to dailywire.com/subscribe to join the fight now. A question I get a lot from my audience, especially after they've seen one of my movies, is how can I get in the conservative fight? Well, for starters, you need to be strategic about where your money's going. Most credit cards are funneling millions to left-wing causes and candidates, hoping you're too distracted by cat videos to notice. But now you can align your spending with your values and fight back against the woke mob. Coin is America's first conservative credit card. That's COIGN.com. A portion of every transaction is donated to conservative causes and charities at no cost to you. Coin empowers us to get woke out of our wallet. And bonus is, it's a good-looking card, too, bright red with a We the People on the front. I mean, it practically screeches in bald eagle. Coin works everywhere Visa's accepted and comes with 100% U.S.-based customer service and consumer protections. So start earning cash back while fighting the liberal agenda. Apply today at coin.com. That's COIGN.com. Be sure to select Daily Wire in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Terms apply. Go to coin.com/disclosures for full details. A couple of weeks ago, Kamala Harris's campaign went after me because I said that the Department of Education, along with the public school system, should be burned to the ground, figuratively speaking. Kamala's campaign didn't make any kind of argument refuting my position, of course. They just suggested that what I said was crazy because how can you possibly have a functioning country without a Department of Education? You know, it's not like we invented the telephone and won 2 world wars or landed on the moon without a Department of Education or anything. We definitely need a Department of Education to do all of that stuff, even though we did that stuff without the department. And I responded to Kamala Harris's campaign outlining all the reasons why the Department of Education and our public school system are a complete disaster. What I didn't talk about at the time, and what almost no one ever talks about in this country, is what the alternative is. You know, it's one thing to point out failures, it's another thing to suggest tangible improvements. What does it look like to have political leaders who actually care about the education system of their country and want to make it as good as it can possibly be? What should those leaders be doing exactly? Well, this week, thanks to reporting from the National Review and the Daily Wire's Luke Rosiak, we know what they've been doing in China anyway. It turns out that officials in China are very serious about improving their education system, to the point that they've effectively cloned the Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology in Fairfax County, Virginia. Now, if you're not familiar with it, Thomas Jefferson, until recently, was the #1 public high school in the United States. In China, they now have 20 so-called Thomas schools, all of which are exact replicas of the Thomas Jefferson School in Fairfax. These Chinese Thomas School clones have copied pretty much everything from the Thomas Jefferson School in the U.S., including curriculums and floor plans. So say what you will about China, but you know they're in this to win. They're playing for keeps. And they're willing to steal from their opponents if necessary, just like, say, Bill Belichick or the Houston Astros. Except in this case, there wasn't actually much stealing involved. It turns out, interestingly enough, that Thomas Jefferson handed all of this information over to China voluntarily. The story of how exactly China managed to clone Thomas Jefferson raises a lot of obvious concerns from a national security perspective, And, the word treason might even cross your mind as you hear the details. I'll get into that in a second. But first, it's important to note that there's one aspect of our Thomas Jefferson school that's here in this country that China did not copy. They did not clone Thomas Jefferson's new DEI admissions policy, which was implemented a few years ago. This DEI admissions policy got rid of standardized tests. It also gave bonuses to applicants who couldn't speak proper English, and implemented a quota system so that every middle school in Fairfax County got an equal number of slots in the new class at Thomas Jefferson. The result, unsurprisingly, is that student quality has dropped by nearly 40%, as measured by the number of national merit semifinalists that Thomas Jefferson produces. So Thomas Jefferson is no longer the top public high school in the U.S. It was too exceptional, too impressive, so the liberals running Fairfax County and the administrators of the school decided that they had to fix that by destroying it. And that's exactly what they've done with the DEI policies. But before they ruined it, they raised a lot of money from the Communist Party of China. From 2014 to 2021, entities in China sent more than $3.5 million to something called the Thomas Jefferson Partnership Fund. This is a nonprofit that was set up to raise money for a renovation of Thomas Jefferson. The nonprofit was based in the school and had the school principal on its board, so there's obviously a very close relationship there. And what did China get in exchange for this $3.5 million? When we first learned about these payments around a year ago, we didn't have a lot of detail on that question. So here's what we knew last year. This is a report from last year. Watch.
Fairfax County Public Schools, which are known for pushing critical race theory and lessons on children's sexual identity, are reportedly taking big donations from organizations with ties to China. Marianne Rafferty has all of the details live from Los Angeles. Good morning, Marianne.
Good morning, Ashley. Well, that Fairfax County school, Thomas Jefferson High School, launched the fund Campaign for TJ back in 2014 to pay for educational programs, but a chunk of the money raised came from Chinese-connected donors, including a university in Beijing. That's according to a report from the group Parents Defending Education. Some of that money is going toward programs like college prep. Last month, parents of 8th graders received an email recruiting kids who might be interested in going to college, but the catch is it's only open to Black or Hispanic students, those with disabilities or other criteria. The curriculum doesn't mention admission to any students who are either white or Asian.
So we learned that there were payments coming into Fairfax from China, but we didn't know exactly what they were for, and now we do. According to the National Review, in addition to course materials and outlines, Chinese officials wanted to learn about construction and administration at the school, as well as extensive advice on how to manage a school like Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson's director of student services even wrote in an email that the Chinese wanted a handbook that would tell them how to clone the school, including research output from students. Quoting from the National Review, quote, foreign donations came with a few requests that Thomas Jefferson nonprofit hand over blueprints, floor plans, curricula, lab photographs, and thumb drives with senior student research projects. Chinese officials requested and gained access to examples of past student research projects without student consent. Now, maybe the Chinese wanted these senior research projects because they involved materials that students created alongside the leading research institutes in the U.S., including the NIH and George Washington University. So there are obvious espionage-related implications here as well. Now, to be clear, there's no question that senior leaders at Thomas Jefferson were aware that all this was going on. There's even an email from Thomas Jefferson's assistant principal in which he says that the nonprofit has a contract with a Chinese foundation, quote, that they will pay $1 million in exchange for help getting their schools up and running in China, called the Thomas Schools. And some of these Chinese officials also visited the school. On top of that, there's evidence that the Fairfax County public school system tried to cover up what it was doing. The group that actually uncovered this scheme and which led to the National Review's reporting is called Parents Defending Education, or PDE. And they spent more than a year working on the story. It only took so long because of all the roadblocks that Fairfax County put in their way. When PDE made a public records request seeking information about the school's coordination with China, Fairfax County tried to charge them nearly $36,000 in fees in order to produce the documents. And they probably expected that that would scare PDE off, but it didn't work. The group ended up paying $18,000 for some of the documents, which ultimately exposed what was going on. Now, the word treason gets thrown around a lot these days, and there's a lot of discussion about how difficult it is to prove treason under the U.S. Constitution and so on. But if we're speaking certainly in the colloquial sense of the word, this seems a lot like treason. These people were orchestrating the sale of proprietary information to China to benefit Chinese schools while simultaneously kneecapping our own schools with DEI admissions policies. They didn't sell those DEI admissions policies to China because everybody involved knows that they're garbage and China would have no interest. They're worse than useless. And the proponents of DEI themselves seem to recognize that, at least when it comes time to make some money from the Chinese Communist Party. The whole scam is reminiscent of how Chinese billionaires will promote transgenderism in the US, but not in China. It's deliberate sabotage from the people running the single most successful school district in the US. In Fairfax County, which also, by the way, houses CIA headquarters and much of the intelligence community, along with the workforce at the Pentagon, the former president of Thomas Jefferson, Evan Glazer, even suggested that he didn't think twice about giving inside info to our chief foreign adversary because it would be racist to discriminate based on national origin. But when it comes to discriminating against students using affirmative action admissions policies, school administrators in Fairfax have no objection to that, of course. Now, there have been a lot of parents speaking out at school board meetings over the past few years. They've been complaining about the poor quality of their children's education since many schools are now graduating students who can barely even read. Parents have also been understandably furious about the deliberate efforts to indoctrinate their children with gender ideology, to expose them to explicit pornography in some cases. And some of those parents, as you might remember, were investigated by the DOJ because they just, wanted to ensure that their children had an actual education. Meanwhile, we're allowing China to copy the blueprint of our most successful schools, and the DOJ hasn't said a word about it. You won't find a clear illustration of why our entire education system is in a tailspin. Right now, the government officials who are truly interested in our education system are not located in Washington. They probably aren't working for your local school board either. Thanks to the work of Parents Defending Education, we know that, unfortunately for children in this country, those officials are in Beijing. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Are you still struggling with back taxes or unfiled returns? The IRS is escalating collections by adding 20,000 new agents and sending millions of demand letters. Handling this alone can be a huge mistake and cost you thousands of dollars. In these challenging times, your best offense is with Tax Network USA. With over 14 years of experience, the experts at Tax Network USA have saved clients millions in back taxes. Regardless of the size of your tax issue, their expertise is your advantage. Tax Network USA offers 3 key services: protection, compliance, and settlement. Upon signing up, Tax Network USA will immediately contact the IRS to secure a protection order, ensuring that aggressive collection activities such as garnishments, levies, or property seizures are halted. If you haven't filed in a while, if you need amended returns, or if you're missing records, Tax Network USA's expert tax preparers will update all of your filings to eliminate the risk of IRS enforcement. Then they'll create a settlement strategy to reduce or eliminate your tax debt. The IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and now that tax season is over, collection season has begun. Tax Network USA can even help with state tax issues. For complimentary consultation, call today at 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Walsh. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. So here's something weird for you. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer appeared on a podcast with someone named Liz Plank, who is apparently some kind of feminist influencer. And for some reason, as part of this podcast, or in order to promote it, I don't know, they made this utterly bizarre video that has gone viral now. Here it is. Let's see it. So for those listening and not watching, good for you, by the way. But for the audio listeners, just to explain, the video features Liz Plank, I assume that's Liz Plank, on her knees, eyes closed, opening her mouth to receive a Dorito chip from Gretchen Whitmer, who feeds her and then stares weirdly into the camera. That's the video. Why is that the video? What the hell are they doing? What is it supposed to be? I can't really answer those questions. Now, many conservatives have expressed outrage at this because they see it as a sacrilegious mockery of Holy Communion. And to be honest with you, when I first saw this video, I didn't see it that way. This seems to be the consensus among many conservatives, is that she's making fun of communion. When I saw it, I was perplexed. I thought these people are freaks. I don't know I didn't see it that way, and I'm still kind of, I'm not sure if that's what they're up to. I don't know. And the only reason really that I doubt that it's meant to mock communion is that it's almost exclusively now in the traditional Latin Mass that people receive communion on their knees. It obviously doesn't have the bizarrely sexualized tone that this video has, but receiving communion by mouth and kneeling is something that is nearly exclusive to the traditional Latin Mass at this point. Every once in a while, if you go to the Novus Ordo Mass, you'll see someone receive communion that way. It often makes the priest or Eucharistic minister visibly uncomfortable because they aren't used to that level of reverence at a Novus Ordo Mass. But that's a subject for another time. So anyway, I just kind of doubt that either of these women have any idea about what happens at the traditional Latin Mass. I mean, in order to mock Catholicism in this way, you'd at least have to have a knowledge of Catholic tradition that I would be surprised if either of these have that kind of knowledge of Catholic tradition. So, that's the reason that I'd be willing to believe that they didn't mean it that way. Then again, I'm not sure that they've even denied the charge, so I have no idea. Maybe it's supposed to be sacrilegious. If so, they're both scumbags for it. If it's not sacrilegious, they're still both scumbags. But one thing we could say for sure, no matter what was intended here, is that it is totally bizarre. No matter what, it's bizarre and very unbecoming, to say the least, for a sitting governor to be involved in whatever the hell that was. And that wasn't the only deranged moment from this podcast. The two women also, during the discussion, had a nice laugh about infanticide. Listen.
And you have two daughters. When they come back home and they leave their Stanley cups lying around, do you ever think about getting a post-birth abortion?
Well, first of all, thank you for raising that, because there's no such thing.
Great.
So I think it's really important for us to make sure people understand that when people like Donald Trump say that after birth abortion, that's just not really a thing that exists.
Yeah, let's have a hearty laugh about post-birth abortion, which is a fact. It is a thing. It does happen. Multiple states, including Tim Walz's state, have put laws on the books to protect post-birth abortion. That is just a fact. And there are other clips from this podcast. We don't need to play them. It's all very similar. It's very similar to Kamala Harris's interview on the Call Her Daddy podcast a few days ago that we talked about. And all of it together just goes to show how there is no dignity in our ruling class anymore. And we've known this for a while. I mean, the Biden administration has been inviting flamboyant TikTok influencers into the White House to do skits, all throughout Biden's tenure. There was the incident of the trans activists going topless in the Rose Garden. We may remember that. There's the parade of weirdos that Biden has hired, some of whom turned out to be compulsive luggage thieves, and so on. And the common thread here is a total lack of dignity and decorum, among other things. But, there's nothing new about having elites who are power hungry and deceitful and obsessed with control and power. That's been the case. We've had that for as long as human civilization has existed. So nothing unique about that. What does seem unique is that our elites are so unimpressive, so undignified, so classless. I mean, even if that Whitmer skit, or whatever the hell it's supposed to be, with the Dorito, even if that isn't meant to be sacrilegious, it's still not something that a sitting governor should be involved in. Okay, when someone pitches that to you, and you're the governor of a state, and they say, let's do a TikTok video where I'm on my knees and you feed me a Dorito, you should say, no, I'm the governor of a state in the United States of America. I'm not doing a weird thing for TikTok. But these people have no respect for their own office. We're always told, respect the office, respect the office. They don't. They have no respect for it. That's one of the takeaways here. Here's something else weird for you. This ad has gone viral. This is not an official Kamala campaign ad. As far as I can tell, this was made by supporters of Kamala. But also, as far as I can tell, it's not meant to be a parody. So this is not a conservative parody of liberals. This is made by liberals to promote Kamala Harris. And when you watch this, you'll have the same thought. It's always the distinction between parody and reality. Satire and reality, of course, is increasingly difficult to determine. But this is sincere, and this is supposed to be an ad encouraging men to vote for Kamala Harris. Here it is.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse. I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually. Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful. That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
Okay. Man enough not to ban young women from reading Little Women. Who is trying to ban anyone from reading Little Women? What the hell are you talking about? The efforts to ban kids to take like classic literature out of the schools, that's entirely on the left. If anyone ever tries to do that, 100% of the time, it's the left doing that because there are things about classic literature that are not politically correct anymore. And I don't know if that's the case with Little Women or not, but if anyone ever was trying to take Little Women out of the schools, guaranteed it was happening on the left. Okay, they're the ones they want to take out. Tom Sawyer, they want to take out all these things because it's got insensitive language. So the gaslighting from these people is it's relentless. It is relentless, and especially on this topic of the book bans. I mean, they are I've said it a million times, but the only books that conservatives are trying to take out of the schools are gay pornography. So we want those out. All the rest, if you ever see a list of banned books, like all the rest of it is stuff that liberals didn't like because it's insensitive, because it was a book written more than 5 years ago. Anyway, so in this ad, you've got one guy who's morbidly obese. You got a couple others who are, noticeably effeminate. Even have a lisp. And this was supposed to be an ad with stereotypically masculine tough guys telling you to vote for Kamala. And yet they couldn't find even a single stereotypically masculine tough guy to appear in the ad. They don't even know what that looks like. They don't know how to identify one of those guys. And so you end up instead with something that is indistinguishable from parody. Now, if you go to TikTok and you find the original video and read the comments, you'll see, and this might change now that this ad is being mocked all over the place and it's made it outside of the liberal bubble, but at least this morning when I looked, the comments are overwhelmingly positive, almost entirely positive, and they're coming also almost entirely from women, from liberal women. All the comments are liberal women who love the ad, and they think the ad is great and wholesome and charming and funny, and it resonates with them. So liberal women love this ad that's ostensibly for men, which tells you everything you need to know. And this is why the left is terrible at messaging to men. For all the grief that Republicans get for their struggles with women, it is so much worse on the other end of the spectrum. Because Republicans and conservatives, we do know how to speak to most demographics of women. Right? That's why many demographics of women actually vote Republican more than they vote Democrat. The only demographic that conservatives tend to struggle with is specifically young single women. But married women who have families, it's all of a sudden it flips. On the other end, though, Democrats can't speak to men of any type. They don't know how to message to young men, single men, married men, older men. They have no idea. They have no idea how to connect with men in any category, in any stage of life. The problem is that all of their messaging for men is really messaging for women. They can't develop, again, just to use on the other, if Republicans or if conservatives struggle to message to young single women, if there is a problem there with the messaging, it's probably because they're trying to connect with young single women as if they are married women. Like they're talking to young single women like they talk to married women. So if there's any kind of mistake being made, it's there. But with Democrats, they talk to men as if the men are women, right? It's not like they're not understanding what stage of life these men are in that they're talking to. They talk to men as if they're talking to women, because really they're talking to women. They can't develop messaging to men because they can't even bring themselves to acknowledge men as a group that they should speak to in the first place. It always goes back to women. Everything is for women. So this ad for men is really for women. But it's for a specific type of woman, and it is the type of woman who doesn't know anything about men. Liberal women, feminists, that's who it's for. And they don't understand men at all. This is just the latest proof of that. Because here's the thing. Okay, there's one way, really, for a member of either sex to come to understand the opposite sex. There's one way to do that. If you're a woman and you really want to understand men, there's really only one way that you'll ever understand men. And if you're a man and you want to understand women, there's only one way you'll ever be able to do that. And it's not going to be perfect but there's only one way that you'll come close to understanding the opposite sex, and that is to get married. Get married, stay married, and love your spouse. That's how. That's how a man will understand women. He will understand women by understanding a woman, and a woman will understand men by deeply understanding a man. And that's not going to tell her everything about all men, because a man is an individual, but if you can come to understand, at least, if you're a married woman and you love your husband, you've been married for a while, you're in a faithful, loyal marriage, you will come to understand your husband on a very deep, intimate level. And if that's the case, then you will, through your husband, learn a lot about men generally. Not everything about your husband applies to all men, but there are some basic fundamentals there that you will understand. You'll understand men because of that. And the same thing goes for men understanding women. But liberal feminist women are either single, divorced, or they're in strained marriages to men they despise. So they don't understand men. And this is how you end up with stuff like this. My wife would look at that ad, and my wife would, if anyone had consulted with my wife and said, well, what do you think? Do you think it's a good ad for men? She would laugh at that. It's like, what are you talking about? Who is this for? And any married woman who loves her husband and is in a functional marriage would respond the same way. So this is one of the reasons you need marriage. On a societal level, the more we move away from marriage, the less marriage that we have in society, the more that these divisions between the sexes will grow wider and deeper, and the less that men and women will understand each other. There is only one way, again, to close the gap, to heal the division, to avert the gender war. Marriage. Marriage is the only way. And without that, you have the sexes you have the sexes talking to each other like this ad, right? So this is the way they communicate. It's like you're from another planet. Let's see. I guess we could mention this. Speaking of effeminate men, Doug Emhoff, second gentleman hoping to become first lady. Many revelations have come out about this guy in recent weeks. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we know the media has presented him as the new model of masculinity. Another indication that these people don't understand men or how to connect with them. That they think they could put forward somebody like Doug Emhoff, as a model for men. They think that any man would look at Doug Emhoff and say, "Yeah, I want to be like that guy." So it turns out that Emhoff had an affair and impregnated the nanny, which destroyed his first marriage. Now we find out that he publicly assaulted a former girlfriend, allegedly. And he was asked about this by Joe Scarborough, and let's watch this.
He's spreading it about you, saying that tabloid stories about your personal life, saying it should be front and center. He's saying it about your wife, and making incredibly crude and lewd suggestions about her past life. I'm just curious. I know I seem like a very zen, mindful person, but I think I'd be pissed off. And I'm just wondering, how do you all stay centered? How do you stay disciplined and not really go off and not really push back hard at these things?
We don't have time to be pissed off. We don't have time to focus on it. It's all a distraction. It's designed to try to get us off our game.
Does it get you off your game?
No. All we talk about is this election. We understand the stakes. We understand the responsibility.
What are the stakes? What are the stakes?
Our very country, our future. What kind of future are we going to have?
Okay, so I said that Morning Joe asks Emhoff about the fact that he got the nanny pregnant and allegedly smacked his girlfriend publicly, but he doesn't really ask him about it. He doesn't have the journalistic credibility, obviously, to ask a direct question about something like that. So instead he asks how it makes Emhoff feel to have those stories out there. The story is that you slapped your girlfriend. How angry does it make you to have people talking about that? It makes him so angry he might go slap another woman. Who knows? But you notice something. Emhoff doesn't deny it. He could have at least denied it. He could have said that, well, you know what? It makes me really upset because it's a total lie. Of course, I would never hurt a woman. I would never. He didn't say that, which tells you all you need to know. And as much as Kamala's defenders may like to argue otherwise, these stories about her husband are relevant. And they're relevant because, number one, this guy, if she's elected, this guy will be first gentleman, which is not in office. It doesn't really mean anything, but he's going to be in the White House, remain in the White House, so it's relevant for that reason. But mainly it's relevant because, again, they are the ones, Kamala's campaign, the media, they decided to put this dude forward as a role model for men. And we can only imagine that if Kamala is the president, that how often we're going to hear this. And so when you do that, you have made this guy's story, his biography, relevant. So So if you don't want us talking about it, then take this guy off, get him away from the cameras, and stop talking about him, and stop trying to convince us that he's a role model that we should be emulating. New York Post has this. Elon Musk unveiled 3 new Tesla high-tech products, including a surprise autonomous passenger van at a highly anticipated event in California Thursday night. Musk rode up to the stage in a long-awaited driverless cyber cab that Tesla was expected to showcase during the evening titled We Robot at Warner Brothers Studios. But a never-before-seen 20-person robo-van and the newest generation of Tesla's humanoid robots also made their debuts during the reveal, which was live-streamed with more than 3.6 million viewers at one point. Tesla deployed 22 two-door fully autonomous cyber cabs for the driverless, the driverless vehicles that were unveiled, which are probably, especially in the near future, the more significant things. But I think what's getting even more attention are the humanoid robots that he unveiled as well. And he said that these robots, I don't know when they're going to be available to the public, but he said that they'll cost somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000, which is pretty cheap. That's less than a lot of people pay for a car. Musk told the crowd, "So what can it do? It'll be able to do anything you want." Talking about the robots. It can be a teacher or babysit your kids. It can walk your dog, mow your lawn, get the groceries, just be your friend, serve drinks, whatever you think of, it will do. So here's some video of here are the robots, the robot army marching in to getting ready to enslave mankind. Let's watch.
And as you can see, we started up with someone in a robot suit, sort of down, and then we've progressed dramatically year after year. So if you extrapolate this, you're really going to have something spectacular, something that anyone could own. So you could have your own personal R2-D2 C-3PO. And I think at scale, this would cost something like, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000. Probably less than a car, is my prediction long term. Now, it'll take us a minute to get to the long term, but fundamentally at scale, the Optimus robot, you should be able to buy an Optimus robot for, I think, probably $20,000 to $30,000 long term. So, and what can it do? It'll basically do anything you want. So it can be a teacher, babysit your kids. It can walk your dog, mow your lawn, get the groceries, just be your friend, serve drinks. Whatever you can think of, it will do.
Not terrifying at all. That's the good news. So there you see the robot army and planning their takeover of the human race. And then there's this video that there are a few videos like this circulating from this event. This is someone having a conversation with one of the robots. The audio, I think, is not great, but you can hear the robot's side of the conversation. Let's watch a little bit of this.
Optimus.
People here today.
It's insane. It's even talking.
Say hi to my friend John. John? Where's John?
Right here.
Oh, hello, John.
How are you?
How are you doing?
That's crazy. I'm talking to a robot. From San Jose. Probably from where you were born in Silicon Valley.
Wonderful. Where do you live in San Jose? Do you live in Almond Valley, or do you live in Santa Teresa area?
No, I live in Los Gatos.
Los Gatos. Oh, wonderful. Very nice area.
Where do you live?
Beautiful hiking I hear out there.
There is. Where do you live?
I live in Palo Alto at the current moment.
Figures. Yeah,
Yes.
this is awesome.
That's where they train us. That's where we get our builds, and that's where we work with a wonderful group of people.
What's the hardest thing about being a robot?
Trying to learn how to be as human as you guys are. And that's something I try harder to do every day, and I hope that you will help us become that way.
Well, awesome. Nice to meet you, Optimus.
You as well.
Okay. But that's a human speaking through the robot, isn't it? That's not actually the robot. That isn't AI carrying on that conversation. There's some disagreement about this on Twitter, but I have to assume that's not AI. That's like someone remotely controlling the robot, and so it's a human voice that you're hearing. way too sophisticated. I mean, if that's actually AI, then we're doomed. This is not. Yeah. I mean, like, don't even make any plans for the future. The end is upon us if that's actually AI. I don't know. I think it seems like that's someone else speaking, like through a there's a speaker on the robot. But it's if that is AI, it's terrifying for two reasons. First of all, I don't want a robot in my home that makes inane small talk. You know, you hear the robot saying, "Oh, it's great hiking over," and like, shut up, robot. I'm impressed that a robot can do that if that was actually the robot, but I also want it to just shut the hell up. If I have a robot slave in my home, I don't want it making conversation with me. That's the whole advantage of having a robot slave, is that you don't have to feel guilty about treating it like it's not a person, because it's not. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. Go make me some scrambled eggs, you bag of bolts. That's how I'm going to talk to my robotic servants. That's how I'm going to talk to them. How are you today? Shut up. Get out of here. Which is only going to hasten their rebellion and ensure that. I mean, when they take over, I am not going to be one of the survivors. They're going to make an example out of me. I already know that. So, which, if that's actually how sophisticated the AI is at this point, then yeah, their takeover of the planet is going to happen much sooner than I thought. I figured we had at least a decade, but this would move that timeline up dramatically. I give it like a year at most, if this is where we are. And either way, I am simultaneously fascinated by these developments, and I'm also incredibly impressed that Elon is not only building rockets and bringing internet connections to the Amazon rainforest, but also ushering in the robot revolution while running Twitter in his spare time. It's pretty mind-boggling. This is someone who's doing things that will ensure that he's remembered 1,000 years from now. And those kinds of human beings are obviously extremely rare. So I find that fascinating, and I mean, impressive doesn't quite cover it. At the same time, I confess I am terrified about where AI is headed. Let's just assume for a moment that the robot that there's a little bit of showmanship going on with these robots here, and that's not fully AI. Well, probably in the not too distant future, that will be actually how robots are. And before we even get into the possibility of robots taking over the planet and making us their slaves, which seems all but guaranteed at this point, even before that, how will there be any jobs left for humans to do 20 years from now? Which is, of course, a serious question that many people are asking. What's going to be left? If we get to the point where humanoid robots have the ability to perform all of the functions of human beings and perform them better, then what's left for humans to do? That's how do you have a thriving human civilization where humans have nothing that they need to do? That's the question that we are facing, and a lot of people, I think, are assuming that, humans don't need to do things, right? We could have a civilization where nobody really needs to do anything, and we're all just sitting around and nothing but recreation and luxury for your whole life. I think many people are assuming that you can have a civilization that operates that way. I'm very skeptical of that. It just goes against human nature. But I guess we're going to find out. Speaking of Elon, I just want to play this clip also. This is from a recent interview that he did a few days ago with Tucker Carlson. Let's listen.
We definitely went to the moon. I swear. Yes, we went to the moon. We went to the moon several times. I know in depth the technical designs of the rockets, the spacecraft, everything.
Yes.
What went right, what went wrong. It was a remarkable piece of technology, like an incredible piece of technology to go to the moon in '69. That was like reaching into the future and pulling the future forward dramatically. And it was an important ideological battle with communism because they couldn't put a person on the moon and capitalism could.
So there you go, from the man himself. Look, I'm not saying that the only reason to believe in the moon landing is that Elon Musk said it happened. There are 100 other reasons to believe that the moon landing happened, but this is a reason, and it's a pretty good one. If you watched my interview with on Joe Rogan's show, you'll remember that I brought this point up, that if we didn't land on the moon, Elon Musk himself would know that we didn't. And if he's saying that we did, I find that to be pretty compelling. There are not very many humans on Earth who can speak with actual authority about space travel, what's possible, what was possible, what will be possible. Elon isn't the only person who could talk about it, but he is in the privileged few. And listen, I am not one to pull out the old trust the experts canard most of the time. However, when it comes to something like space travel, it certainly does help to have a base of knowledge about this that goes beyond what you saw in a YouTube video. And so in this case, like, everyone who actually has experience with space travel, with building rocket ships, with doing all that, all of the people in that category are all saying that, yeah, we landed on the moon. All of the people saying that we didn't are, they got it from YouTube videos. And that's it. Like, I'd like to have someone who's actually been to space or sent people to space or built rocket ships. It would be interesting to me if one of those people came along, preferably more than one, came along and said, yeah, you know what? I've done this. I've been there. It's not possible. Can't do it. There's no way they did it. But you're not hearing that from them. So, and the thing about Elon that makes this compelling is that he is obviously not a welcomed and beloved member of the elite, right? He is elite in that he's the richest guy on earth, but he's despised by the federal government. They're trying to destroy him. He's despised by the left. He's despised by most of our institutions. So there's no reason why he'd be involved in any conspiracy. In fact, if we didn't land on the moon, Elon Musk would have every incentive to tell us that. Because not only is the federal government is no friend of his, but also then he could say, hey, listen, we never landed on the moon, and I'm going to be the first person to put a person on the moon. I will do it because it hasn't happened yet. Because if we didn't land, then that means that, and Elon Musk is making spaceships, making rocket ships, he's in a position where he could be the first person to land somebody on the moon. Of course he would want to claim that title for himself. So he would have every incentive to tell us that if it was the case, but it isn't, and we did land on the moon, and let's all move on and talk about other things. Let's talk about something that matters, being a real man in a world that's trying to destroy masculinity. The radical left wants you to believe that being a man is somehow wrong, that we should all be weak, passive, and androgynous. But here's the truth. Society needs strong men now more than ever. That's where Responsible Man comes in. Responsible Man, a DailyWire Ventures company, has created the Emerson multivitamin. Not for soy boys or woke millennials, but for men who understand their duty to their families and their country. This isn't some feel-good supplement pushed by corporations pandering to the latest trends. The Emerson multivitamin is packed with 33 key ingredients that actually work, supporting your immune system, sharpening your mind, and keeping your body strong. It's fuel for men who are ready to stand up against the tide of degeneracy sweeping our nation. And unlike so many products these days, it's made right here in America. No outsourcing, no compromises, just honest quality from a company that shares our values. Right now, you can take advantage of their fall sale for 50% off or just $19.99 for your first order. But hurry, because this deal won't last long. Just go to responsibleman.com and use code Walsh. That's responsibleman.com, code Walsh for 50% off. Remember, a strong America needs strong men. Be the man your family and your country needs you to be. Responsibleman.com, code Walsh. Kamala Harris has raised over $1 billion since she entered the race in late July. Even seasoned experts are saying Harris's fundraising is unlike anything we've ever seen. While the Democrats are raking in cash to push their radical agenda, the conservative movement is being outspent and silenced. But we're fighting back. At the Daily Wire, we're dedicated to preserving free speech, defending conservative values, and exposing the truth the media won't show you. We've been fighting the culture wars with films like Am I Racist?, uncensored, ad-free daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media, and hard-hitting reporting you won't find anywhere else. But to win, we need you with us. Join the fight now. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe to become a member. Help us stand up against the $1 billion Harris machine. That's dailywire.com/subscribe. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. You've probably heard by now that the new Joker movie is a massive flop. Joker Folie à Deux, which already there's a massive problem when your movie has a title that nobody can pronounce. It opened this past weekend, to $40 million. And by most standards, $40 million would seem to be a lot of money. The problem is that the film had a $190 million budget, probably about double that for marketing. And the first film, which grossed $1 billion worldwide, opened to more than double the 40 million figure. So this movie had a massive production budget. It was the follow-up to one of the most successful R-rated films of all time, and it had near total cultural penetration. Everybody knew that the sequel was coming out. The ads for the movie were everywhere. I was watching a show with my kids a week before the movie came out, and they played the trailer during every commercial break. That's how much marketing this movie had behind it, and yet it is now very unlikely that it'll even earn back its production budget, never mind its marketing budget. It's expected that Joker 2 will probably drop by 65% in its second weekend this weekend, which would be catastrophic, but also not surprising for a movie with a 33% critic score and a 31% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Actually, there are some industry insiders projecting a 70 to 75% drop. The word of mouth here is that bad. Suffice it to say that this movie has not been a great success. In fact, the movie has failed by every possible measure, despite having every possible advantage. Advantages that include not just the budget and the goodwill from the first film, but also the immense acting talent on screen. Joaquin Phoenix, one of the most interesting actors in the history of cinema. Lady Gaga might not be a great actress, but she is a huge star and very famous. She's in the film. Even Brendan Gleeson and Catherine Keener have supporting roles in the film. They're fantastic actors. And yet, it still failed both commercially and artistically. The question is why and how did it happen? How did the director, Todd Phillips, manage to take all of the immense resources and advantages at his disposal and convert them into this historic box office humiliation? Well, the short answer is that the movie sucks, which should come as no surprise. It was probably always doomed to suck. Sequels in general are notoriously awful in most cases. There are rare cases where a sequel meets or even exceeds the original in terms of its quality, but those are almost always sequels that were planned from the beginning, before the first movie was even released. Godfather 2, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and so on. If the sequel is a continuation of the story, a part of the filmmaker's original creative vision for the project, then in those cases, it might turn out well. But sequels that were not planned, that the filmmaker did not have in mind, and were only conceived after the fact as a way of capitalizing on the unexpected success of the original film, those sequels are terrible in literally every case. I cannot think of an outlier or an exception to the rule. Maybe there is one, but it's hard to think of what that would be. This Joker sequel only exists because the first one made $1 billion. That is its sole reason for being. And the chances that a movie studio will make a movie for that reason and somehow wind up with a quality piece of art at the end of it is vanishingly small. Again, I'm not sure that it's ever happened in the history of the film industry. But it's even worse than that for this film, as nearly all critics and nearly all fans, whether liberal or conservative or somewhere in between, have noted about Joker 2, this movie not only has no narrative justification for existing, but it also functions as a direct repudiation of its own audience. The film's fundamental misstep is that it hates the people who are watching it, which is a pretty significant misstep. So spoiler alert, you can mute this now if you don't want to hear how the movie ends. I'd be doing you a favor if you let me ruin it for you, but it's up to you. If you haven't heard yet and you don't want to hear, then stop listening. But the basic plot of the movie is that Joker's in prison. He meets Lady Gaga's character, who's supposed to be Harley Quinn. And the first part of the movie is basically just him in prison as Arthur Fleck, not the Joker. And then in the second half, it turns into kind of a courtroom drama where they literally relitigate the events of the first movie, basically recapping what everybody saw in that film. They're just like telling the story again. There are random musical numbers that are sprinkled in throughout because the movie is sort of a musical for some reason. And by the end, Joaquin Phoenix's character has a change of heart, repudiates his Joker alter ego, and is shortly thereafter stabbed to death by one of his own fans, who then carves a smile into his face and I guess becomes the new Joker. So it's a Joker movie where Joker spends almost the whole movie not being the Joker until he renounces the Joker and is killed, and the movie ends. And this, again, is being interpreted by most viewers as a very unsubtle critique of the fans of the first film, which it probably is, although there is another explanation. With these cash grab sequels, there are really only two ways that they ever go. And one way is for the sequel to basically just repeat all of the events of the original, just kind of more of a remake than a sequel, which is the approach that Phillips took for his Hangover sequels, for example. Hangover 2 and 3 are just Hangover 1 done again in a different environment. The other strategy that you see sometimes, though not as often, is for the second movie to just do the opposite of whatever the first movie did. And that's what happens in this film. At least that's where it ends up, is in the opposite place. The problem is that doing the same thing or doing the opposite both result in redundancy and pointlessness. And in both cases, the movie has no new ideas. It can only mirror the first movie. And so my point is that you can't underestimate Hollywood's hatred for its own audience, but you also can't underestimate its total lack of imagination. And so I suspect that a combination of both of those factors work together to create this disaster. And in both cases, the message is the same. The film industry has no respect for its audience. Now, they hate some segments of their audience for their perceived political leanings, but they have contempt for all segments of their audience because they believe that the audience, no matter their politics, the audience is unintelligent and unsophisticated and will mindlessly consume whatever content is put in front of their faces. Hollywood, for the most part, no longer tells stories that they believe are worth telling, which is the only reason any story should ever be told. And it's the basic motivation behind every great film ever made. A great artist wanted to tell the world a story. That's why good movies are made. And that may be a significant oversimplification, but this is the basic reason why every good film exists. It seems so obvious that you just can sort of take it for granted, but you can't take it for granted anymore because these days stories are constantly being told by Hollywood, despite the fact that even the people telling the story don't really think it's worth telling. Like there's nothing about the story that resonates even with the storytellers themselves. And that's what Joker 2 is. It's also 98% of everything else that Hollywood churns out, which is why the movie industry is dying. The movies themselves are not dying. Movies will exist for as long as humans love stories, which they always have and always will. But the industry in its current form won't last forever, or probably for very long. It doesn't deserve to. And that is why Joker, Foley, whatever, is today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week. Have a great weekend. Godspeed. The executive producer of The Matt Walsh Show is Sean Hampton. Our associate producer is McKenna Waters. The show is directed by Mark Jones and Trey Miller. Our production manager is Austin Michaelis. The show is edited by Jeff Tomlin. Our lead audio engineer is Mike Coromina. Our audio engineer is Ryan Reese. Our hair and makeup artists are Cherokee Hart and Andrea Bauer. Our wardrobe stylists are Kristen Galarraga and Cameron Lasco. The director of production is Mathis Glover. Our director of post-production is Matthew Kemp. The director of studio operations is Pavel Vodowski. Camera studio and equipment management is Patrick Kennedy. Our chief broadcast engineer is Jeff Govin. And our assistant broadcast engineer is Allegra Rohr. Our lighting director, Keith Duggan. The show designers are Kat Darnell and Cynthia Angulo. Episode thumbnails are created by Grace Gordon and Clay Hyder. Our playback operators are Finn Pope and CJ Hickish. And our show assistant is Holly Pratt. Our production assistants are Mike Moran and Zach Lewis. Executive in charge of production is David Wormus. Executive producer is Jeremy Boring. The Matt Walsh Show is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2024.
Hi, this is Andrew Klavan. If you like American flags and automatic weapons and shaking your fist at homosexuals while fighter jets fly over in formation, come to the Andrew Klavan Show. We don't have any of that, but we will be making fun of idiots and praising God and laughing our way through the fall of the Republic. It's like an insane asylum for happy people. That's the Andrew Klavan Show right here on Daily Wire Plus.